like the lovely mystical fog we put on for you this morning for our overseas visitors. My name is Dearbhail McDonald. If you are from overseas, a BH in Irish is a V. It will make your life easier and impress many, many Irish people. As Zoe was just saying, and the last 12 months have been really incredible for this genial, harmless-looking trial lawyer to my right. He's become a granddad. He's been appointed the US ambassador to Ireland. And he's managed almost single-handedly to turn Deerfield, which is the US ambassador's residence here in Ireland in the Phoenix Park, into one of the coolest music venues and one of the coolest arts venues through the Creative Minds series. I've been very fortunate to attend part of the series, and it really has turned the ambassador's residence into a fantastic salon and brilliant forum for bringing ideas. But you might just tell us, because you've really, Kevin, you've placed the Creative Minds series, this initiative, at the heart of your tenure here in Ireland. I think it's how you yourself feel you'll be judged when you eventually leave these shores. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the Creative Minds series is something that we launched in January. I came to Ireland as the U.S. ambassador in October, and we launched the program in January. And the idea was to find new, innovative ways in which to make sure that the great relationship that exists between the United States and Ireland now is carried on to the next generation of Irish leaders and American leaders. And we've tried to do things like find new creative links with people who are innovative, who are creative, who think outside the box, who take risks. And we've brought a series of American people that fit that description to Ireland for conferences at the ambassador's residence and doing master classes and whatnot around the country to try to foster this great relationship and broaden it so that more people can participate in it, and that people who have been outside of it up till now can jump in and use their creative forces in order to join in the great relationship, which has now resulted in really strong economic ties between the two countries.
Look, I mean, the series has been running for less than a year, but it has seen some fantastic artists, innovators, real leaders in their fields here. We've had David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, I think was the very first.
He was the very first?
Yeah, he was the very first. Rufus Wainwright went to Sligo.
Was the most recent?
Yeah, and but just tell us about some of the highlights of the programme for you. One that really struck with me was, especially if any of you have nieces and nephews and watched Inside Out, was seeing Pete Docter come to the embassy and speak about that whole creative process. And
Pete talked about, Pete is one of the animators at Pixar, and who had done things like Toy Story and was here for the promotion of Inside Out. And he talked, just a really decent, wonderful fellow who talked about not only his successes, but his failures. And part of the creative process is failing. And I think that's an important message that's actually come through all of the participants in the program have talked not about just the great successes, but how they profited from failure, how an idea that they had, which wasn't just quite right, got refined by rejection, and how they were energized by the fact that they were moving forward, and that life is not a totally upward movement, that there are downturns. And Pete talked about that. He also mentioned why he was having some difficulties with his teenage daughter. She was becoming more socially withdrawn at this period. So Pete sort of thought of Inside Out as a way to relate to his daughter and how to help her deal with the various emotions that she had to deal with. And he used his creative process in almost in a simple parental way. And it was just stunning to listen to him talk about that. And he mentioned he said he said there might be a young Pete Docter out in Castlebar or out in Limerick listening to the program, and his advice was simply just do it. Sit down, and if you're an animator, animate. Just keep drawing until you get it right. If you're a musician, keep working at your craft. Be passionate and just keep going at it. And it was I thought, inspiring. at some levels and very humane and parental at others.
Absolutely, and that was kind of a theme of using a personal experience. You've been indulging a little bit.
I have been.
Your own interest and your own taste. You managed to bring Ben Folds to the embassy.
There are a lot of nice things about being the U.S. ambassador to Ireland, and one of them is I get to be a real fan. And so we've had some people come to Ireland that I just absolutely adore as a fan. Ben Folds is one of those people. He came and again talked about about the rocky road forward and how his love for music and his creative process was really just part of him. And he talked about writing the melodies and writing the words, and went through a really wonderful session with us that RTE, God bless them, was broadcast nationally. They've been a great partner of ours and have allowed us to get the message out to many more people than we can fit in at the ambassador's residence.
And in that way, you've kind of turned the residence into a little bit of a concert hall. It's
been a concert hall, a lecture hall, and just I've never thought of it as a cool place, but I like that. I think I'm going to go with cool place because it really is fun to watch the young people come into the residence, many of whom have not been to this beautiful structure before, to see that, but then really to engage with other people that have the same interest. With David Chase, for example, we had a lot of writers. Yeah. People wanted to know, how did David Chase end up writing this long TV series called The Sopranos, when he said publicly he was trying to write one movie, but the movie didn't work, so it ended up being several years of a TV show. So we had a lot of writers that he talked to and that talked to each other, and so the whole residence is turned into sort of a little fun classroom where creative people can get together and support one another, because that's really what we need going forward, especially in a place like Ireland, which has such a strong history of creativity.
And it's not just, they're not just coming to speak, they're actually coming here to collaborate. So Ben, for example, I think he did at least one album when he was here in Ireland. He had done
one album in one day several years ago, and then he did part of an album while he was here. He was here for about a week, and he stayed with us at the residence and put on several classes around with
Is that the quid pro quo? Did they get to stay with you, hang out?
Well, it's a nice little hook that we can, because these people are all volunteers. The people that come for Creative Minds are volunteering their time to come here. They're committed, and that's really one of the requirements we have. I guess one requirement is that I'm a fan of theirs. And the second thing is that they want to connect with young people. They want to connect. They want the creative process to continue on. They understand that Ireland is this wonderfully creative island, and they want to come here and participate.
Yeah. Some of the collaborations are more than just aspirational. So Ireland, for example, this year hosted the first ever digital music festival, and we saw at the embassy Christopher Tin,
yes,
who was the first person to win a Grammy for a video game music for the fantastic Baba Yetu, who collaborated with Emer Noon, a conductor and composer from Ballinasloe in Galway.
Yeah. And they came in and they brought a quartet and played some of the music that they have written for video games, which sounds a lot like any kind of a symphony that you might hear if you went down to the National Concert Hall. And Christopher talked about how he was a little frustrated that young people weren't tuning in to really good music, so he found a way to have them tune into that. And the music written for these video games is in some ways indistinguishable from some of the classical music that you're used to hearing in different sorts of audiences. And what he's done is then taken his creativity and moved it into a whole new generation.
Yeah, and that was so enlightening even to learn the scale and the size
yes,
of the money in the video game music industry, and to have Irish choirs and Irish musicians, to see Irish traditional music now making its way into video game technology. It was a fantastic.
Yeah. And he mentioned it's a way that musicians can actually make some money. I mean, these people are being paid nicely to do the video games.
Some of the speakers, you had Jim McKelvey to the embassy, and The story is kind of well known of how he failed to get a deal because the merchant payments that led to the founding of Square. But what were the kind of insights that he was sharing with you?
Well, Jim is, he's from St. Louis, Missouri, which is also my hometown. And although I didn't know him before this, he talked again in this thread that we've had weaving throughout the whole Creative Mind series he talked about his failures, how he didn't think of Square first. Square came after several attempts at other things. And he was able to explain, again, how just ordinary people with a passion that just don't want to give up can be successful. And he talked about a lot about how various parts of the United States, particularly the area that I'm from, are really great landing places for new technology. So many people from Europe, and particularly Ireland, go to the Silicon Valley or go to the East Coast, where it's much more expensive to live and to maintain oneself. Where Jim talked about how in the Midwest, for example, amongst other places, the startups can go and really economically perfect their craft until they're really into the later stages. Yeah.
You've said that was actually quite a common theme, I think, with everyone going through it. Just it's almost like the hero's journey, just and that whole intersection of arts and culture, and it can be a rocky road. It's a rewarding one.
It can be, and in this culture, things happen so quickly. Ireland for 1,000 years. If you look at the Book of Kells, those monks sat out there and were doing that creative calligraphy, and nobody knew about it for hundreds of years. And now these inventions at the speed of light go out, and people can communicate much more quickly. There's still some common problems. The monks had to protect their creativity from the invading Vikings, and people now have to have copyright protections, so to make sure that the creative mind that is behind the invention can make a living out of it. So we still have some of the same problems, but the creative process, particularly on this island, goes forward.
Yeah, and you've described that kind of how arts and culture are the soil of innovation in terms of a very rich context for the broader business context.
We had a conference at the residence of about 500 or 600 people attended called the Creative Economy. And we had a number of speakers. It sort of resembles the Web Summit on a much smaller scale, but people coming from all over Ireland and the U.S. to talk about how innovation is really the future economy, and how people can get together. Particularly, as the American ambassador, I'm particularly interested in the relationship between my country and Ireland, and how we get those two countries together. Right now there's a tremendous economic boom going between the United States and Ireland, and it really has created hundreds of thousands of jobs both in Ireland and in the United States, and we want that to continue. We want the relationship, which started with many impoverished immigrants, and then continued on with the shared history and a shared culture, to now has blossomed into this economic really a joint prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic. We want that to continue, and the creative process is going to be a big part of that.
You said that the innate creativity of the Irish, when wedded with the nimbleness and the sheer scale of the US market, is what makes this a very potential, huge, powerful connection. Tell us a little bit more about the creative economy, and especially maybe for some of our overseas visitors. Just it's a small island, but the scale of investment in Ireland and the sheer amount of US companies, tech companies in particular, and the top tier of their management and their innovators that are located here.
Sure. Well, again, this is just as it relates to the United States and Ireland, which is my portfolio. There are about 700 American companies resident now in Ireland, and it's the total top tier of the tech industry of the United States is resident now in Ireland. There are also about 250 Irish companies that are prospering very well in the United States right now, and this shared economy now has resulted in about $40 billion in trade last year and about $400 billion in investment between the two countries. And when you consider that Ireland is a country of 4.5 million people, that's a lot of money. And there are a number of reasons why American companies like to invest in Ireland when they're ready to go abroad, and why Irish companies want to invest in the United States when they're ready to go abroad. The common language, the fact that the Irish companies can jump off into other North and South American countries. When we come here, can jump off into the other countries of the EU. There are a lot of reasons, but the primary one is the fact that we, as two people, simply get one another. Americans have a special place in our hearts for Ireland and the Irish because of all of the immigration. And I think for the same reason, the Irish, it seems to me, have certainly take very good care of American tourists and American ambassadors. So it's a very good relationship. And
I think that how you perhaps perceive yourself is as a custodian of that, yes. Of that relationship. But by placing Creative Minds, the series, at the heart of your program or your mission here, what are you hoping ultimately? I know you've said in the past that it's basically, perhaps with something like a forum like this is doing, it's just trying to just create some sparks and set some fires.
I think that when you put creative people together, you don't know what's going to happen, although it's going to be good. And so what we're trying to do is put creative people from all different walks. From, you've mentioned some musicians, you've mentioned Jim McKelvey, a tech person. Next week we're going to have a program with a hospitality expert, a person who just has made his life's work making sure that people at hotels and restaurants are comfortable. We want to put those kind of creative people together from Ireland and the United States. And in my view, nothing but good will happen from that. And I don't think we can specifically say what it is, although I'm pretty comfortable in saying that Creative Minds will help move the great relationship that exists now into the future, into the next generation.
And how do we measure that success?
Well, I don't get my report card until about 30 years from now, so I won't know. I just know I feel very comfortable comfortable with the concept, and I believe that we can. I believe we cannot rest solely upon 4th of July parties and St. Patrick's Day parties to move this forward. We've got to do better than that. And this is a wonderful way to do it.
That translates into something concrete?
It must. It must. Yeah. I mean, we already have the familial relationship. We have the cultural and historic ties just because of what's happened. Now we have some economic creativity and economic success, and we just need to move that over and broaden the bridge so that more people can walk over it.
Well, listen, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, and if you're lucky, you might manage to get onto the invite list for the US Embassy to get into the coolest kind of secret, not so longer venue in Dublin at present. So listen, many, many thanks for your time. We hope that you really enjoyed the summit, that you've taken something from this session and that you'll continue the conversations on. So from myself and from Kevin O'Malley, the US Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you.